Part 2. TMA-1. Chapter 7. Special Flight. Dr. Heywood Floyd had left Earth many times before, but as the moment of takeoff approached, he still felt nervous. The jet that had rushed him here from Washington after that midnight meeting with the President was now dropping down towards one of the most exciting parts of the world. Here, along 30 kilometers of the Florida coast, were the greatest structures of the space age. Near the horizon, he could see the shining silver tower of the last Saturn V, a museum now for 20 years. Not far away from it stood the great building where all the early ships had been built. But these things now belonged to the past, and he was flying towards the future. As his plane turned, he could see the space plane in a pool of light being prepared for its flight to the stars. It seemed very small from this distance, until he looked at the tiny figures all around it. Then he remembered that it was more than 60 meters across the narrow V of its wings, and they were preparing this enormous machine just for him. Though it was 2 o'clock in the morning, a crowd of reporters and cameramen were waiting for him when he stepped off the plane. But he could say nothing except no comment as he walked through them. The stewardess greeted him as he entered the space plane. "Good morning, Dr. Floyd. I'm Miss Simmons. I'd like to welcome you on board." He looked at the 20 empty seats. On her advice, he chose the front one on the left, because it would offer the best view. He sat down, put on the safety belt, and fixed his bag to the next seat. A moment later, the loudspeaker came on. "Good morning," Miss Simmons said. "This is Special Flight 3 to Space Station 1. It seemed she wanted to follow the normal routine, and Dr. Floyd smiled. "Our flight time will be 55 minutes, and we will be weightless for 30 minutes. Please do not leave your seat until the safety light is lit." Floyd looked over his shoulder and called, "Thank you." She smiled, a little embarrassed. He leaned back in his seat and relaxed as the captain's voice came through the loudspeaker. "Take off in 15 seconds. You will be more comfortable if you start breathing deeply." As the great machine left the ground, he felt himself sinking deeper and deeper into his seat. It was difficult to move, but there was no real discomfort. In fact, the blood rushing round his body made him feel young again, and he wanted to sing aloud. This was certainly possible, because no one could hear him above the great noise of the engines. His mood changed quickly as he realized he was leaving Earth and everything he had ever loved. Down there were his 3 children, motherless since his wife had died in a plane crash 10 years ago. The pressure and the noise both suddenly decreased, and he heard the captain's voice again. "Preparing to separate from lower stage. Here we go." There was a slight movement as the space plane freed itself from its carrier. The lower stage would fly the 16,000 kilometers back to Florida, and it would then be prepared to lift another space plane away from the Earth. When the space plane's own engines started, the speed increased only a little. In fact, he felt no more than normal gravity. But it was impossible to walk, since up was straight towards the front of the plane. If he had been foolish enough to leave his seat, he would have fallen right to the back. It was an uncomfortable feeling, as if his seat was fixed to a wall, with all the others below him. He was trying to ignore it, when dawn suddenly exploded outside. In seconds, they moved through layers of red and pink and gold and blue into the shining white light of day. Though the windows were heavily coloured to reduce the light, Floyd was still half blinded for several minutes. He was in space, but he could not see the stars. Then he felt his weight decreasing as the space plane levelled. The engines slowed down and then fell silent, and they were in orbit. If he had not worn a safety belt, Floyd would have floated out of his seat. His stomach felt as if it wanted to do so anyway. He hoped that the pills he had been given half an hour and 15,000 kilometers ago would do their work. He had been space sick just once in his career, and that was too often. The pilot's voice came through the loudspeaker. "Please observe all zero-gravity rules. We will be arriving at Space Station 1 in 45 minutes." The stewardess came walking up the narrow passage to the right of the seats. Her feet came off the carpet slowly, as if they were stuck in glue. In fact, she was walking on the bright band of magnetic carpeting that ran the full length of the floor and of the ceiling. The bottoms of her shoes were also magnetic. "Would you like some coffee or tea, Dr. Floyd?" she asked cheerfully. "No, thank you," he smiled. The plastic drinking tubes always made him feel like a baby. Miss Simmons stayed as he opened his bag. "Dr. Floyd, may I ask you a question?" "Certainly," he answered, looking up over his glasses. "My boyfriend works at Tycho," she said, "and I haven't heard from him for over a week. Is it really true about illness on the moon?" "If it is, there's no need to worry. Remember the illness in 1998? A lot of people were sick, but no one died. And that's really all I can say." She smiled pleasantly and straightened up. "Well, thank you anyway, Doctor. I'm sorry to take up your time." "No problem at all," he said, then opened his bag and began to look through his endless technical reports. There would be no time for reading when he got to the moon.